All disease begins in the gut. If you have that stubborn weight gain around the midsection, that's poor gut health. And if you're struggling with constipation, bloating, acid reflux, fatigue, insomnia, and even chronic conditions such as Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, an IBS label, IBD, or even hormonal imbalances, then I suggest you watch this video, because in hand, if you heal your gut, you heal your chronic condition. By the end of this video, we have a complete understanding on how to take a root cause approach to healing your gut. To begin with, it takes just one round of antibiotics to permanently change your microbiome. PPIs like omeprazole and other medications such as ibuprofen, Tylenol, acetaminophen, thyroid medication, narcotics, opioids, all disrupt the microbiome. In some ways, slowing gut motility, meaning the movement of food, making you have constipation, sometimes diarrhea, and all other issues. Food additives, processed food, all these things disrupt the microbiome. And there are many signs that is more than just the common bloating and constipation that you may have a gut issue. I listed off some conditions in the beginning, but if you're dealing with fatigue, depression, and anxiety, that is a sign that you have gut issues. If you're dealing with an autoimmune condition, that is a sign that you're dealing with a gut issue as well. If you're dealing with joint pain, that is a sign that you have an autoimmune condition as well. I mean, a gut condition as well. My apologies. And if you're dealing with a lot of nutrient deficiencies, that's a sign that you have gut issues as well. And so you see that there's a lot of things that are intertwined with poor gut health, poor microbiome health. But what are some of the things that goes wrong with the microbiome? Well, the first thing is intestinal permeability. Leaky gut is what majority of individuals know it as, and that's when the mucosa lining, which is nested on the small intestine, becomes permeable, leaky. Now foreign invaders inflame the bloodstream, and it causes immunological responses. Bacterial imbalances, whether it be any type of commensal overgrowth or fungal overgrowth, these causes imbalances in the microbiome, giving you these gut symptoms and gut issues, and even these other conditions. Impaired digestion and absorption. If you're not able to digest and assimilate food correctly, obviously that will cause nutrient deficiencies, okay, which can also hinder the gut in itself. So it's kind of funny because if you have poor gut health, you can get nutrient deficiencies, but if you're dealing with nutrient deficiencies, that can hinder your gut health. So everything's like this big negative feedback loop here, which is crucial to understand taking a functional root cause approach. If you're dealing with food sensitivities, sign that you have poor gut health, or food sensitivities can cause poor gut health, you see. So it's just all connected. So let's talk about a few things with the gut. So number one is the small intestine. Most people walk around bloated, constipated, and full of gas. And this is from small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And this may be you. And there's clear research that shows small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is associated with Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism and celiac disease, also known IBS and even IBD. So this is when there's a bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine. 57% of your nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine. So the small intestine takes in a lot daily. And if it gets inflamed, or if we continue to eat, processed foods, food additives, and things like that, we can actually disrupt the small intestine in ways of overgrowth of bacteria. So what happens is that we're not able to digest the nutrients properly. So then it sits in our small intestine and starts to ferment. And that fermentation causes gas. And that gas is the bloating, the distension that you experience on a day-to-day basis. When you lift up your shirt and you look 6 months pregnant, that's distension. Okay. And so, this is why many people go low FODMAP, or they, look at things to get rid of the overgrowth in the small intestine, because that's where a lot of the issues start to occur. And this actually comes from, eating inflammatory foods and then eating a bunch of food that feeds the gut bacteria. So fiber and prebiotic food which is might be known for the overall population as higher FODMAP food, actually contribute to feeding the gut, which is really good because if we feed the gut with good fiber and good prebiotic food, then it produces short chain fatty acids, which actually help the intestinal lining and also helps metabolism even. But what happens though is that if we're dealing with an overgrowth in the small intestine, as I've just mentioned before, then if we continue to feed the bacteria, then it's just going to sit there and ferment. So more is not better in instances just like that. So this is why either eating a lower FODMAP diet at this point, or a paleo diet, or an autoimmune paleo diet is actually pretty beneficial for that period of time. But that also occurs if you're dealing with food sensitivities, because the autoimmune paleo diet helps with food sensitivities because it removes a lot of food allergens. It also removes a lot of higher FODMAP foods, and also removes a lot of inflammatory foods, obviously. And so this is a really good diet if you are struggling with these chronic gut symptoms, but it's not going to correct the root cause. So that's why I don't go out and say go follow this diet, because it's not individualized to you and it's not going to fully correct the true root cause. Another thing that's disrupting your gut is gluten. If you're eating a lot of gluten, because gluten is just a pro-inflammatory protein, which is found in a lot of grains, wheat, and barley. But a majority of people, and studies are showing this, that a lot of people actually deal with non-celiac gluten insensitivity, meaning that you don't have celiac, but you still are sensitive to gluten. Okay, and we know this because a lot of people can feel a difference when they go gluten-free and then when they're not gluten-free. So that's something, a tool for you to use to go gluten-free if you are struggling with these gut issues. Not for life, but for a period of time, just not being so dogmatic, but just doing that. Processed foods, food additives, and food quality. We already know processed foods are bad, but I want to hone in on food additives. A common food additives is something called emulsifiers. Emulsifiers have been shown, well, emulsifiers to begin with actually help with the shelf life of the food and the texture of the food. So that's just why people put it in certain food products. But it actually has been shown to break down the mucosa lining, therefore causing bacterial overgrowth, also leaky gut. Okay, and the reason why artificial sweeteners are an issue for your gut health is that they're not actually absorbed in the gut. So what happens is that they just say fermented in the small intestine, which then obviously will cause a lot of issues. Another thing that disrupts the microbiome and causes your issues is stress and adrenal fatigue. Stress comes in many forms, whether it be physical stress, chemical stress, whatever, emotional stress like trauma or whatever. That can disrupt the microbiome by manifesting and disrupting your vagus nerve and your central nervous system. So if you're staying in a sympathetic dominant state, that's going to hinder the microbiome because it's going to slow down blood flow to your intestines. It's going to slow down digestion secretion, and it's going to slow down your gut motility. So these are just a few ways on how stress impairs your gut microbiome. So let's talk about constipation, because majority of Americans struggle with constipation. So here are the 14 root causes to your constipation. Number one is nutrient deficiencies. If you're deficient in magnesium, for example, that will cause constipation. Number two is excess nutrient intake. If you have too much vitamin D and calcium, that can cause constipation. Number three is blood sugar and insulin resistance. Okay, blood sugar can impair your gut microbiome, therefore causing constipation. Another is thyroid issues. Your thyroid gland actually helps gut motility. So if it's slowed down or it's sluggish, that's going to impair your gut motility, therefore giving you constipation. Okay, adrenal imbalances, just like I talked about before, high cortisol, it's going to do it. Neurotransmitter imbalance, particularly serotonin, because around 90% of your serotonin is in the gut. So a lot of your neurotransmitters are housed in your gut, but majority of the main one in the gut is serotonin. Okay, SIBO, if you're dealing with bacterial overgrowth, that is inevitably going to impair constipation or give you constipation. Dysbiosis, if you're overgrowth of a bacteria, it's going to cause food sensitivities. Sympathetic dominance, high stress, excess progesterone even. Okay, Insufficient water or fiber, that's a given. Insufficient dietary fat, should be known. And medications. So those are just some of the root causes of constipation. But what can you do if you deal with chronic constipation? Number one is to perhaps use magnesium citrate. This helps draw water into the bowels and help fully flush it out. Another is magnesium glycinate. It helps with, this is more long-term support, just improving your body's, nutrient uptake of magnesium. Next is just adequate hydration, electrolytes, eliminating food triggers like gluten, dairy, and adding healthy fats and perhaps fiber in some cases, depending on if you're dealing with an overgrowth or not. And so, let's get on the topic of, what can you actually do to start healing your gut in a very simplified approach? So majority of the time when I'm working with clients on a day-to-day basis, we're using a strategic 4R approach, which is remove, reduce, replace, repopulate, repair / rebalance. And what this is a 4-step approach to fully fix the microbiome. And so number one is to remove. We want to remove the negative things. You want to remove the negative things that affect your gut microbiome. And you also want to remove any bacterial overgrowths or fungal overgrowths. What you can use here is specific supplementation, okay, to help with any type of issue you're struggling with specifically. You can use something called biofilm disruptors as well, which biofilm is the hard to get bacteria that usually antimicrobials or antifungals can't get in itself. So you can use biofilm disruptors, antifungals, and antibacterials with an elimination type diet to remove the food triggers that could be inflaming your gut. So by doing this, you can reduce the bacterial overgrowth or the fungal overgrowth, remove the inflammation within the gut, and help with restoring it back to optimal function. During this phase, though, you can actually use specific probiotic supplementation because probiotics do not colonize in the gut, and they actually have shown evidence to help with removing bacteria, but not changing or messing up the microbiome in any way. It also has been shown to remove inflammation within the GI tract and also has been shown to help repair leaky gut. Another tool that you can use is sodium butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid. And you'd want to use this in this specific situation, and there's a particular reason why. Because most people are going to follow a low FODMAP diet, which is, ideal at that moment of time. But you're going to want to follow that diet for several weeks. But when you're following that diet, you don't have any fiber or prebiotic foods that feed into your gut to produce the short chain fatty acids. So this is why endogenous supplementation of upwards to several grams is very useful, because that short chain fatty acid that gets produced from the prebiotic foods that you eat that are higher FODMAP help with feeding your intestinal cells and regulating your metabolic function coming from your gut, something called GLP-1. So this is why using probiotics with sodium butyrate, short chain fatty acids, and even digestive enzymes during the remove and reduce phase is imperative in healing your gut. Healing your gut. So you'd want to follow this protocol for about 4 to 6, even 8 weeks sometimes, depending on how your symptoms are going. During this time, you can also use things to help with tightening your junctions of your gut if you're dealing with leaky gut, which majority of the time you are if you're struggling with these chronic gut conditions. And by the way, you can do, this would be a side tangent here, gut testing, So majority of the time, there are many gut tests that you can get, food sensitivity tests you can get. But the ideal one that I like to use is a stool test, like a GI map. It's not going to tell me everything. I mean, there's oat test, things like that, organic acid testing and things like that can also help. But I like using a GI map. It tells me a lot about segregatory IgA, also tells me commensal overgrowth and dysbiosis overgrowth, sometimes parasites if they're in the stool, and those type of things. But that's what I like to use. But going back to what I was saying, majority of the time, Most people are dealing with leaky gut when they need to heal their gut, or when they're dealing with chronic gut conditions. So using specific supplementation like aloe, glutamine, zinc carnosine, marshmallow root tea, slippery elm, or anything like that helps with repairing your gut lining and tightening the junctions. So you can use that at the same time you're using the probiotics, the digestive enzymes, and the sodium butyrate with the antifungals, the antimicrobials, and the biofilm disruptors while using an elimination diet, lower FODMAP diet. So you might be confused here. This is why I recommend writing it down as I speak, because there's a lot going on here, but I'm trying to give you the full protocol here. So while you're doing this, you can follow this protocol for around 4 to 8 to even 12 weeks. And by then, you can slowly reintroduce foods back into your diet that are, higher FODMAP, seeing how you go. And off the top of my head, I know just like asparagus is one, trying to add that back into the diet after some time, seeing how you feel after, and you don't want to stay on these supplements forever, and that's, should be a given. But, you want to just have a period of time where you use these tools, and then when you're done with it, you're not using it anymore. That's exactly what they're for, and you're not going to have to use it again. So that's exactly what I do with my clients all the time. But these are just some of the things that you should know. So, just coming off now, getting off the computer and just, freestyling it, what you need to understand is that most of your chronic health conditions go down to your poor gut health. Either microbiome imbalances, fungal overgrowths, intestinal permeability, or poor digestive enzyme secretion, hypochlorhydria, as some may call it, all are the main true reasons to why you're dealing with these chronic health issues like weight loss resistance, thyroid imbalances, hormonal imbalances, PCOS, PMS, low testosterone, fatigue, insomnia, depression, anxiety. It all goes down to your gut health. And so, with that being said, though, yes, poor gut health may be the root cause, but it's not the underlying cause to why you're dealing with this chronic health condition. So we have to unlayer it. Okay, it's like an onion. You have to unpeel to the core. We have to get to the core. What is the underlying causes to why you deal with a gut issue that then manifests into a chronic health conditions? A majority of the time, it's high stress, emotional stress, eating processed foods, overtraining, maybe undertraining, undersleeping, and just all sorts of negative things. Nutrient deficiencies, not getting adequate whole foods in, can all contribute to poor gut health, where some of that poor gut health can manifest into other chronic health conditions. But I hope you found this video useful, very helpful. And if you're looking to heal your chronic health condition, get to the root cause, balance your hormones, and lose 20 to 30 pounds of stubborn body fat while not over exercising and eliminating all different things, then message me root cause today.